Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fireside MMA podcast. Today for you, we have a UFC 314 reaction and breakdown video, as well as the results of the PFL World Tournament from this past weekend, and some breaking news about the Global Fighters League. First, I want to get into the PFL World Tournament results. I unfortunately couldn't watch the event this weekend, so I don't have anything as far as in-depth analysis of any of these fights, but I do have the results for you here. For the women's bantamweight division, Oloradana beat Diana Avsargova by submission in round 1. Kana Watanabe lost to Jenna Bishop by unanimous decision. Ekaterina Shakalova beat Juliana Vasquez by another round 1 submission. And Liz Carmouche TKO'd Ilara Joanne. For the men's bantamweight division, Mateus Matos was submitted by Jake Hadley in the 3rd round. Justin Wetzel beat Kasim Kasumov by unanimous decision. Mando Gutierrez submitted Francesco Nuzzi by rear naked choke in the very first round. And in the main event of the card, Marceli Alves beat Leandro Higo by split decision. So it'll be fun to see them in the next round. Hopefully I'll be able to watch that one. Overall, seems like a good card. Not too many decisions. A lot of first round submissions. 2 first round submissions for the girls, and then a first round TKO for the girls as well. Seems like the women really put on a show on Friday. I don't think there was any of them that went to decision. One women's fight went to decision, which out of 4 is not bad at all. Now for the breaking news for the GFL, they're kind of dead on arrival. They were supposed to debut May 24th and 25th. That was their goal. And those 2 were canceled. Apparently the main investor didn't pay. They I don't know if they didn't believe in the promotion, they just didn't want to pay, but their main investor didn't pay. The founder of GFL is looking for new dates around mid-June. He said June 15th or 16th. They're trying to push forward in this. I think the GFL is a really cool idea. I do very much enjoy the team-based tournament, and just for fighters after their primes who want to keep fighting but can't do it at such a high level as the UFC or as PFL or formerly Bellator. So I think it's a good thing, but it didn't work out. At least this time, they're looking for new investors. They're looking to push forward, and I hope it works out for them. I think it's a great idea. I see the vision, and I like where it's going. I hope they can get something going for them. So now we can get in to the UFC 314 pay-per-view. May I just say, this was an absolutely amazing fight card. From fight 1 to fight 13, every fight was amazing. There wasn't a single fight where there wasn't a bathroom break fight, as I call them. There were such good fights, a lot of great finishes, and just so much talent on this card. I mean, people showing new sides of themselves as fighters, people further showing why they belong in the UFC, and I just think it was an incredible card overall. So let's start from the bottom and we'll work our way to the top. First, Nora Cornell defeated Haley Cohen by submission in round 2 from a rear naked choke. When watching this fight, I thought Haley did a very good job. in the first round. She clearly had the game plan of, I know I'm not going to be able to strike with her, but I can wrestle her and get her tired so I can take advantage of that. You can see she was very early, as soon as she felt some of those leg kicks, she was wrestling. She was clinching on the cage a lot, and she was doing very well there. For the last, I think, 2-ish minutes of that first round, she just was on top in half guard, throwing her shoulder at her, getting off some ground and pound. And she had a very good game plan. I think that was the best way to mitigate what Cornell's strengths are, was to tire her legs out with that wrestling especially, and keep her on the ground. But then the second round started, and Nora just came out, and her striking was just amazing. She was popping that jab a lot. Her kicks looked great. Whenever Haley would go into that clinch, she had knees for her every single time. Eventually, they got to the ground. Haley tried the whizzer throw, and ended up giving up her back. And from that, Nora Cornell, excuse me, was able to get her back and sink in that rear naked choke. I think it was an absolutely incredible performance from Nora. She showed her striking early in round two, and it was just such levels ahead of Haley Cohen. You could see her picking her apart, and even on the ground, Nora was still able to keep up with her. Even in the first round, when Haley first got that takedown, Nora snatched up an incredible armbar that, if she had more experience on the mats, and if she was a little bit more refined in her jiu-jitsu, she would have been able to finish it. It was fully locked in. If she would have extended and grabbed the leg, underhooked Cohen's leg, she would have been able to finish that armbar and got her out of there in one round. But the opportunity in the second round presented itself, and she didn't let it slip. She got that rear naked choke for a beautiful performance. And now she's, I think, on a 3-fight winning streak. She was number 13 ranked going into this fight. It's going to be fun to see her continue to rise in those bantamweight rankings. And she seems like she could be a top contender in that division eventually, as she keeps working up. In the next fight, Marco Tulio defeated Trayshawn Gore in round 2 by TKO. Man, that was tough to watch. Like, the strength Marco Tulio has in his punches, the power he has is just insane. His striking looked incredibly clean. Just It was a masterclass of striking. In volume, in accuracy, I think at one point before the finish, I think he was 63% of his strikes landed, which is absolutely insane. His pace in that first round, he was just always throwing something. And then his variation in both target and the type of strike. He was throwing kicks. He was throwing his jab. He was really using that jab well. And he was throwing to the body. He was throwing to the legs. He was mixing it up. He was putting his strikes together very, very well. He had that teep right down the middle that he was using very effectively whenever Trayshawn Gore was pressuring into him. And then that left hook too. He landed a lot of good left hooks, and that's what most of the damage I feel was done to Trayshawn Gore. That left hook really did a lot for him. And he just looked incredible. Like, it was truly a striking masterclass. The only thing is, Trayshawn Gore was so freaking tough. So tough. And it's hard to really explain unless you see the fight, but he got knocked down. He would get up again. He would get hit hard, and he would hit harder back. Just incredible heart and resiliency from Trayshawn Gore. The only critiques of Marco Tulio I have, because he fought a beautiful fight, is just his chin was in the air. the whole fight, and that's what allowed him to get caught. There was times in the first round and even the second round as he was finishing Tresean Gore where if he would have tucked his chin, if he would have kept his hands a little bit higher, he would have been able to not get rocked. When you're putting on a performance like that, the last thing you want is for one strike to slip in and you end up knocked out. So as soon as he does that, as soon as he gets that habit of having his chin tucked and having his arms a little bit higher, he's going to be a real problem in this division because his striking is just so on point. And then after the fight, he called out Marvin Vettori, which I can't exaggerate enough how important these post-fight interviews are. Because you have a hot mic in your hand, you have Joe Rogan right in front of you, you get maybe 2-3 minutes, and you got to make it count. You got to set yourself up for success. And I think that was a great call out. When they win a fight and they have a guy in mind that they want to fight, I think that's very important and something I saw over and over again on this card and I was very happy about. So he called out Marvin Vettori, and I do think that's a great fight for him. I think stylistically, he can deal with the wrestling of Marvin Vettori. I mean, Gore's a great wrestler, and he was able to mitigate that. So I think if we see him against somebody like Marvin Vettori, one, it's good just because of the name. If he could beat a guy like Marvin Vettori, who's fought Adesanya, who's fought Gastelum, who's had a lot of these really big names that he's fought, I think that would propel Tulio, especially if he can do it in style like he did this past weekend. Third fight on this card, Sumu Dajari defeated Mitch Rappos by split decision. This was an interesting fight. This was a flyweight fight, but Sumu Dajari does not look like a flyweight. That dude is tall and he is lanky, and I think that was really just the storyline of this fight. Raposo couldn't get on the inside to strike. The length was just too much. He would get the wrestling sometimes. He was shooting very well, actually. His double leg was amazing, and he timed it incredibly well off of Suma Dajari's strikes. But it just wasn't enough. Suma Dajari didn't have great takedown defense, but every time he got taken down, he would get his back to the cage almost immediately and stand up. And while it would have been better to see him not get taken down at all if he had that sprawl or if he had something to negate these takedowns before they happen so that they're not scored at all. I do think the ability to get right back up is also just as important, especially in the judge's eyes. If a guy lands 5 takedowns on you but only has 9 seconds of control time, that shows, and I think that's what Suma Dajari did here. It would have been nice to see Mitch chain his wrestling together because that was the only time he was able to do anything is when he was shooting those double legs and getting him down. It would have been nice to see if, as Suma Dajari was getting up, switching to a high crotch, or as he was raising those arms up from around his butt, if he would have just stuck with it and not let him go and maybe got double unders and worked those really high and tried trips or something, but just chain the wrestling together, make it more effective, and just keep that pace on him, because riding him wasn't working. He never was able really to settle in those ground positions just because Suma Dajari would pop right back up. And ultimately, Suma Dajari just did more damage. It wasn't a lot of damage. It's not like he was mauling him. It's just that when strikes were thrown, he was the one landing them in these clinch positions because Mitch would just stay there sometimes and not chain the wrestling. He was getting striked in those clinches. He'd be on a leg, getting punched in the head. And ultimately, that's what pushed the fight towards Suma Dajari. it's unfortunate to see when there's such a clear way to win and it's just not working. Because the wrestling really would have worked. He was able to get these takedowns, and I just think the range was too hard to dictate for him, and just how tall Sumadajari is for the division. When he got up, it was like a giraffe drinking water. Like his legs were spread far. His quad pod. There was really no getting him down from there. Raposo just wasn't big enough to keep him down. The fourth fight of the card, Michal Olejniczak defeated Cedric Dumas in round 1 with a TKO. Michal looked great. He had great striking in this fight. He had Dumas overreacting to his strikes so early and such like wild overreactions. Like he would feint a jab and Dumas was like against the cage and like trying to pull some matrix shit and just had him looking like a fool, honestly. And it was just a dominant performance. Dumas really didn't do much in this fight. Michal's striking looked great. Um, as soon as I saw the way he was striking, it was very reminiscent of the Fighting Nerds camp, and he shouted them out in his post-fight interview. Carbohario was in his corner. So I would like to see him stay with that gym. His Brazilian coaches were doing a lot for him, and it really showed improvement from his last performances. There was a little bit of a protest from Dumas in the stoppage. It was stupid. Like he was getting 12-6 elbowed after he got knocked down for a good 30 seconds. Granted, he wasn't hurt. He wasn't like he wasn't knocked out, sure, but he wasn't doing anything. He had his butterfly guard. He wasn't trying to collect any underhooks, try to keep Olejniczak towards him. He wasn't trying to pull him in. He wasn't trying to kick him off. He was just complacent and covering up. And in a fight, you can't be covering up. That's a sign of submission, and that's how it gets called. I don't really understand the protest, especially when you had in the Marco Tulio and Tresean Gore fight, where Gore would get knocked down, and he like hard strikes, and he was knocked down, but he was still moving and still wrestling and still trying to do something, whereas Dumas was just covering up and staying there, yet still protested when the ref pulled Olejniczak off him. Olejniczak was another one of the guys that had a great call out after the fight. He called out Paul Craig. I like that. I like that fight. Not only are those just two big dudes who just like tough, like crazy looking dudes that can put on a fight. I think it's a great matchup stylistically. I think Olejniczak's striking is very good, would be very good against the defense of Paul Craig, just because Paul Craig's defense, he doesn't really keep a tight guard. He's susceptible to the leg a lot. He's very like heavy on that front foot. So I think Olejniczak's striking will be good against Paul Craig, but I also do think that Paul Craig introduces a great test towards Olejniczak's takedown defense and submission defense, because Paul Craig is an absolutely incredible grappler. And not to say Paul Craig can't strike, but after seeing what Olejniczak just did, I wouldn't put him on Michal's level. And that was it for the early prelim fights. Great fights. Incredible fighters and great results. I think I was 3 for 4 on the predictions for the early prelims. so that's always great. I like being right. Um, so it's good to see that those fighters were able to implement their game plans and pull out the victories. Next, first fight of the prelims, Julian Erosa beat Darren Elkins TKO in round one. Um, I mean, it's hard calling this a fight, honestly. It really is hard calling this a fight. It was disgusting. Um, 5 seconds into the fight, Darren Elkins got knocked down by a jab that barely touched him. He got a takedown maybe a minute in, and one up kick landed, and he never recovered. It was like watching your grandpa try to fight somebody, and not like your strong veteran grandpa, like a 90-year-old, like nursing home patient grandpa. It was not a good thing to watch. He looked like a zombie out there. He looked dizzy. He I really don't know what happened. But not to take anything away from Erosa, he looked good. The fight wasn't really long enough to see anything technical from Erosa. His striking was looking good. His pace that he set was good. It was a little slower, but he was throwing slow strikes because the way Elkins was reacting. It's just hard to get over the way Elkins looked. He looked drunk. Like, he looked like a drunk guy. Like, you see a drunk guy, like, walking in a bar trying to start a fight with somebody. Like, that's what Elkins looked like. And it's hard to watch after the career Elkins had, what he's given to the company, and just the caliber of fights that he's put on. I think DC pointed it out on the broadcast. Just you can only have so many barn burners in your career, and he's had a lot of them where he can just tough it out and take those hits. And man, it was just hard to see. But Erosa, even late into his career, he said he feels like he's in his prime. He looked like he could be in his prime. Definitely would like to see him competing at higher levels in this featherweight division. He's 35, which I would say is old, but our new featherweight champion is also 35. So we'll see how Erosa looks going forward and seeing how he looks up in the rankings. Next fight, one of my favorite fights on this card, Chase Hooper beat Jim Miller by unanimous decision. That was just an absolutely dominant grappling performance from Chase Hooper. The timing on the takedowns was just incredible, timing it off the strikes of Jim Miller. Um, his wrestling, the way he kept him down, the way he was able to keep taking his back. He stood on his back for probably a full round combined in the standing backpack position. And his striking was on point too. Early in just about each round, the striking was absolutely incredible. He looks truly like a mixed martial artist now. Like, when he first started, he was a grappler. He was a submission grappler, a competition wrestler who started doing mixed martial arts, and now he's a full mixed martial artist. His striking looks amazing. He absolutely destroyed Jim Miller. He The constant threat of the submission was amazing. I loved the truck position he kept going into, looking for that crotch ripper or banana split. The heel hook he was trying to do from that position as well was incredible. The attack of the rear naked choke when he was on his back, just everything was incredible. Um, he gassed out Jim Miller, which is a hard thing to do, because Jim Miller is such a resilient guy, and he has that dog in him. Like, he's 40 years old and he's still fighting. He has the most UFC fights ever. He has the most appearances ever. And he's not an easy guy to fight, but Chase Hooper made it look easy. The only critique I have of him is really more ground and pound. He had Jim Miller on the ground a lot, and he kept him there, and he was riding him on the cage, and he had that body lock a lot, and I would have just liked to see more ground and pound from him to just really put a stamp on these kind of victories. Because while he didn't get the submission, if he would have just beat Jim Miller up more, I think he would have been more impressed with himself. He pointed out after the fight that he was a little bit disappointed in his performance. You could see it on his face. He didn't like not finishing the fight. And I think with some ground and pound, it would have opened one better submission opportunities. As you get guys to freak out, as they start scrambling, arms start to come up, legs start to open up, necks start to reveal themselves. So I do think just more ground and pound would help Chase Hooper's game. And I know for a lot of guys that go from like competition grappling into MMA, they forget while they're on the ground that they can still strike. They get into this mindset like, oh, I'm wrestling now, or oh, I'm in a jiu-jitsu competition now. So while they're doing very well, they're in a position where they can clearly be hitting the guy to open up these opportunities, and they don't. But that's really the only critique I had of Chase Hooper, as well as I was ready to to stop seeing him fight old guys, and he said in his post-fight interview that he's ready to stop fighting old guys. He wants young guys. He wants up-and-comers like himself to fight. He called out Tom Nolan. I think that's a really good fight. I think that's a fun fight for sure. And I think a dominant victory or a finish in that fight will definitely propel him into the lightweight rankings, get him up there with a possible 12 to 15 ranked guy. Maybe not 12 because Patty was just 12, and I don't think Chase Hooper's ready to fight somebody like Patty. So maybe just somebody in the top 15. I think he's on a really good trajectory right now, and I'm very happy for him. And it's going to be interesting to see his game evolve. Just one fight ago is when he got his striking together. His jiu-jitsu and wrestling is always going to be there, but it'll be fun to see as he improves how his striking will take over and who he becomes as a fighter. So next we had the title eliminator for the women's strawweight division. John Diroba beat Yan Janan by unanimous decision. Just a great dominant performance, great ground control from John Diroba, and a lot of good submission attempts. There was a really close armbar in the first round. And her striking looked good too. She was on the feet, and she didn't look like she was. She looked like she was holding her own on the feet with Yan Janan, and like she's been improving. The grappling was too much for Janan to deal with, and I don't think that was. I don't think that was like a surprise to anybody. Zhang Wei Li was able to choke Janan out, even though Yan Janan was able to make it out of that round. It was just, it was just it was not a great day for Janan. She got pretty much controlled, and yeah, that's all that happened in the fight. Really, it was just a lot of ground control and some good ground and pound from John Diroba. I think she's an interesting challenge for Zhang Weili. Clearly, that's the next fight. She's on a, I think, 3 or 4 fight winning streak now. She just beat the number 1 ranked person in her division. So I think the title shot is obviously the next step, and it'll be interesting to see how she performs. I think if she performs as she did today, I think if she can mix in a lot of those submission attempts against Zhang Wei Li, she has a pretty good chance of beating Zhang Wei Li. It's hard to say many people have a chance to beat Zhang Wei Li, but I think John Diroba has really proved how good she is on the ground. And it's not just wrestling like somebody like Carlos Barza, because Zhang Weili can fight against wrestlers, but to see somebody with a good jiu-jitsu accolade go against her, I think um would be a good challenge for Zhang Weili. So now in the featherweight division, another featherweight fight, we had Dan Ige, who was able to get a stoppage against Sean Woodson in the third round. That was a terrible stoppage. But that doesn't take anything away from Ige. He was performing well into the stoppage. But the only thing is, the fight was so close up until that point. It could have been 1-1. Sean Woodson could have been up 2 rounds. Dan Ige could have been up 2 rounds. So I think the stoppage that early was not good. I didn't look to see what the cards were, but man, it was a bad stoppage. I do think Ige would have still won and eventually knocked him out, just because he had him on the ropes and he was striking well and he looked good in that third round. That looked like one of the best performances from Ige we've seen, but it's the fight game and you never know what's going to happen. So I think the ref should have let that fight go on just a little longer, and see what happened. But he started that round amazingly, and he performed really well throughout the whole fight, especially dealing with how lanky and how tall and how weird of a guy Sean Woodson is to fight. And I'm happy for Ige. He's on a little bit of a losing streak. He's been fighting really tough guys in Lerone Murphy and Diego Lopez, and it's nice to see 50K Ige back and better than he's ever looked before. And that was the prelims for you. Ige was the featured prelim. Went 3 for 4 on these fights too. I didn't have Ige winning, but I'm happy to see he proved me wrong, because he went back and really showed who he could be and who he is in the featherweight division, and that is a contender. Like, he truly is a contender, and I think he could work his way back up those divisional rankings. And now for our main card. Starting off with Dominic Reyes. Maybe my biggest mistake in breaking down the UFC 314 card was underestimating Dominic Reyes. Round 1 KO over Nikita Krylov. Just an incredible knockout. Just such beautiful power, and just it was an absolutely perfect, picture perfect knockout, and it really showed his fight IQ. This fight, I think, really solidified how good he still is, and man, he's back. That's just all I have to say. He's back. His jab early in that round and the footwork he was using was both incredible. And I saw 2 exchanges that really stood out to me, where Krylov overextended on his second punch, his lead up shot to whatever he threw before. And this time when it happened before the knockdown, he throws that first strike, and Dominic Reyes steps back, slips, and just shoots that left hand right down the middle and knocks him out cold. Just as soon as the punch hit, Nikita Krylov was out cold. Didn't need any follow-up strikes. It was just an absolutely incredible performance from Dominic Reyes, and I'm sorry that I underestimated him. He's going to be a problem in this light heavyweight division. I think as he keeps climbing, there's a lot of good fights for him. I'm not too sure who I'd want to see him fight next. We have this Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree fight coming up. I don't think Pereira has a fight. We have the new champion. Maybe Pereira gets a rematch. there's a lot going on in that division, so it'll be interesting to see who they pair Dominic Reyes with. I hope he stays active, and I hope he's still hunting for that title with the same ferocity he did back in the day. Next fight, the quote-unquote people's main event. John Silva defeated Bryce Mitchell by ninja choke in round number 2. An incredible performance from John Silva, an absolutely dominant victory. He outstruck him, and he defended the takedowns beautifully. Mitchell had some early success with the striking. His kicks were looking very good. But John Silva, every time he was hit, he would hit back. So the striking really canceled out early in that first round. And then the takedowns, he got one early. Almost got caught in a guillotine. Almost got caught in a ninja choke as well in the first round, hunting for that takedown. And then the second round, John Silva did a beautiful job defending the takedown and getting that submission. It was amazing to see Bryce Mitchell on the floor, knocked out with his eyes wide open. Just a great visual. Loved watching him get submitted, and I'm happy John Silva got in his face and barked at him. It was just a great performance from John Silva. A lot of great stuff happening for the fight nerds on this card. They had a great night, Saturday night, and John Silva's really dangerous for this division. There's a lot of good fights for him. I think him and heard on the broadcast after the Yair Pitbull fight that Joe Rogan wanted to call for Yair and John Silva to fight. My only problem with that is Yair is number 5 ranked right now. He's probably going to be higher after this fight. John Silva's unranked right now, so that discrepancy doesn't really make sense, especially when you have the storyline of Diego Lopez and Yair Rodriguez already started. For me, I think the best fight for John Silva would be Dan Ige. I think that's an amazing fight. Both guys are scrappy. Both guys are amazing. I think they're pretty even in all fields. I think in striking and in grappling, they're pretty dead set. So I think that would be a very, very fun fight to see. And I think it's a little bit more in Silva's realm right now. While he is absolutely an amazing fighter, I don't think him going up and fighting the number 5 guy is quite fair yet. Speaking of the number 5 guy, Yair Rodriguez defeated the debuting Patricio Pitbull by unanimous decision. Exactly as I said it happened. Yair manages the distance so well in this fight, used his kicks beautifully, the leg kicks and the body kicks he used. And then he really picked his shots with those head kicks, those big strikes from the outside. And it did help that Pitbull was just stiff. He was just in front of him the whole time, just stagnant. And I don't know really what happened. Maybe the lights were too bright in the UFC compared to those of Bellator. He just didn't. I don't know if it was unmotivation. There was just really no sense of urgency. He let that first round just go away, and the other 2 rounds, Yair was just striking beautifully. He defended Pitbull's wrestling very well. And he got even a takedown of his own at almost at the bell in round number 2. So it was just an incredible performance from Yair. He really showed who we know him to be. He's been on a bit of a losing streak recently, but I really think this was a revitalization of who he is. And I don't think there's a better fight to make for him other than Diego Lopez. And we'll get into that more when we talk about Diego Lopez. But they have the history. They have the story. I don't know what was going on at that press conference. I don't know what caused that, but I do think it'll be an absolutely incredible fight to see them two, especially stylistically. Um, Now we get into, I think, the greatest performance of the night. Paddy Pimblett dominated Michael Chandler for 3 rounds to get a TKO victory. And that was just the theme of this fight over and over. Just domination. The first round, Chandler was able to do very well in the first round. He used his wrestling incredibly well. He wasn't an idiot in this fight, which is not something you can say for any other Chandler performance in the UFC. But man, Paddy just broke him down beautifully. He outstruck him, he outwrestled him, he outgrappled him, he outlasted him. He got Chandler real tired towards the end of that fight. And that knee at the beginning of the third round just set up so beautifully right before it. He threw the leg kick that got Chandler to try to go in, and he leaned. He dipped down to that same side. So then Paddy does it again, and he's able to shoot that knee right up there to where Chandler was dipping his head to. And I mean, it was truly a great performance. And we've seen Chandler lose, and we've seen Chandler lose quite a bit, actually. He's 1-5 in his last 6 fights. But nobody's ever beat Michael Chandler like this. Just absolute domination. And not only has nobody beat Chandler like this, Chandler's never been this good against any of them. Chandler used fight IQ, something nobody knew he had. He wrestled incredibly well in that first round, and he did it to stop Pimblett. It was offensive, but it was also defensive. It was, hey, I'm not going to let you get started because you're going to be on the floor under me. I think this was one of Michael Chandler's best showings of his fight IQ, just that first round. So the best Chandler's looked, and he still got beaten the worst he's ever been beaten before. Charles Oliveira fought him for 5 rounds and wasn't able to stop him. Dustin Poirier fought him, but was not as dominant. Michael Chandler had Poirier hurt in that fight. Win or lose, he had good moments against him. Justin Gaethje, same story. Justin Gaethje beat him, fought him for 3 rounds, but couldn't stop him. Paddy Pimblett is a very, very real problem for this lightweight division, and I think it's time that people stop underestimating him. He called out Justin Gaethje after the fight. I think that's a good fight. I firmly believe that this Oliveira to Poirier fight's happening, so I don't think Oliveira will be there for him, although I do think that would be an incredible fight. The grappling in that fight would just be absolutely amazing, and I would love to see it. But I think the real options for him are Gaethje or Sarukian. I think Gaethje makes more sense than Sarukian. I think that fight would be better to see. I don't know what plans are in the lightweight division. Obviously, Islam has to defend his belt soon. I don't know if Topuria gets it right away. I don't know if Charles gets it. Islam doesn't want to fight Charles because he's already beat him. He doesn't want to fight Sarukian because Sarukian pulled out. Gaethje's the only one he hasn't fought. So I really don't know how that goes. But this puts Paddy the baddie in a very good place. Because if Renato Moicano was able to get a title shot from the number 11 ranked position, one more fallout like that, something like that from Sarukian or Oliveira, and Paddy's up there. Paddy is not even just one fight away from the title. He's one slip up away from the title. He's one guy tripping over a cord and breaking his ankle away from a title shot. And I think that's very important. I do think Paddy has a chance. Now, obviously, anybody has a chance in a fight, but Paddy has shown skills that other people haven't been able to do as well. If you use MMA math, let's use Dustin Poirier for example. Dustin Poirier beat Michael Chandler. Dustin Poirier goes and fight Islam Makhachev and gets Darce choked in round 5. But he took Islam to round 5. And Islam did not leave that fight with 0 damage done to himself. He did not leave that fight with a clean face. He got hurt. Now let's take Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett beat Michael Chandler better than Dustin Poirier beat Michael Chandler. Whether you want to say that's true or not, that's a fact. Paddy dominated Michael Chandler. Dustin Poirier did not. So, it seems that if Paddy is put into that position against Islam Makhachev, he could perform better than Dustin Poirier did. Stylistically, I do like Paddy against Islam Makhachev, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit. But it's the truth. He's not far from a title shot. And I think we do have to look at him as a serious contender. He beat the number 7 ranked guy. That puts him near the top 5, if not in the top 5. I do think Paddy can strike on par with Islam Makhachev, especially with how long he is. I think the range in that fight would bode well for Paddy. Now, the grappling, it's hard to say just because the Dagestani wrestling is always hard to beat. But Paddy's jiu-jitsu is good. Paddy is great jiu-jitsu. I think that's going to be a very interesting fight to see. And I think it's inevitable that we see this fight. I don't see somebody stopping Paddy on his way to Makhachev. I can see people skipping the line. I could see Topuria getting the shot before Paddy simply because he's a former champion moving up in the division. Now, speaking about the division Topuria left, we have a new champion at 145 pounds, and his name is Alexander the Great Volkanovski, who beat Diego Lopez by unanimous decision. Old Alex Volk is back. He is back, and he looks good. That was an incredible performance from Alexander Volkanovski. He level changed extremely well in the fight. Whenever he would get close and get Lopez hurt, he would level change. He got the takedown in the first round. The wrestling was looking great. He got into those pocket exchanges and was able to win a lot of them. He had a lot of the bigger strikes in those exchanges, even though Diego Lopez hits harder. And then that jab, he just kept pumping out that jab. And I think this was a very important thing, that even though Diego Lopez was 5 inches taller than Alexander Volkanovski, he only had a half-inch reach advantage. Their reach was almost the same. Volkanovski used that jab extremely, extremely well, and he used incredible footwork and movement. Like I said, in his keys to victory, he couldn't stay still, and he didn't. He was never caught against the cage, and the times where he did get hard, or he did get hit, but he was never putting himself in danger the way he was against Makhachev or Topuria. Now, Lopez still performed extremely well. One, this was the Volkanovski we've seen before. So this is that greatest of all time Volkanovski, the pound for pound king Volkanovski. That's the performance we saw from Volk on Saturday, and that's the Volk that Diego Lopez had to fight, and that's the Volk that Diego Lopez was able to knock down twice. He arguably won that second round, because of that knockdown. I still scored it for Volk, but it's not a crazy thing to say that that fight could have been 3-2. I think, and then he performed extremely well in that fourth round, also knocked him down. So there's no taking anything away from Diego Lopez because he performed extremely well. Next in this featherweight division, I think we're gonna see Evloev versus Volk. I think that's an incredible fight. Um, that's just such a great fight. I think the wrestling and scrambling in a fight like that will be incredible to see. Um, and I think that's a fight that has to be made. Evloev has more than proved himself as the top contender in featherweight. And I think um I think Volk is game to fight these top contenders and these new guys coming up, especially when there's a lot of guys he's already fought on his way up, and Evloev is one of the ones he hasn't. And then for Diego Lopez, that Yair fight, it's a great fight stylistically for both of them. It's an entertaining fight for the fans, and I don't know the story of their beef. At the press conference, they really got into it. Yair was talking about Rodriguez's team. Rodriguez didn't like that. I don't know where that started from. I don't know what the team did to Yair. Um, don't know much about that story. But if they're not fighting each other and they're yelling at each other at a press conference, just wait till you put them against each other. I think it'll be fireworks on the mic. I think it'll be fireworks in the octagon. I think that's the next fight to make. Um, and especially with how much is going on in the featherweight division, so much movement from this card and from a couple previous cards, and new people joining the UFC. I think there's a lot of movement in this featherweight division. I think it's going to open up some interesting opportunities for contenders to slip into spots they don't think they would have been in before, just because of the movement and the earthquakes that are going on in that division. But that is all I have for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, leave a like. Let me know your thoughts on the fight card. Anything you noticed in the fights that was interesting to you. What you think should be next in this featherweight division, or for any of the other fighters on this card. That's all for now. See you guys on the next one. Bye.